Välkommen alla sammen. Someone reminded me, thank you. I had done the notes for this video a while ago, but forgot to film it. So, Valkyries. Maybe my number one favorite subject in all Norse mythology, and so important to our spirituality. Not only were they kind of like divine figures that chose the men on the battlefield to die and take to Valhalla, but they also functioned as kind of guardian spirits slash even sexy mistresses to help protect us in battle, to help protect her lover. Now, they seem to be kind of fighters in the spiritual realm, battling while we are fighting in the physical world here in some sources, but actually in other sources they are real living women. So this video I'm going to go over all of it, and I'm going to give you my thoughts about it and how these were maybe the actual original shield maidens that we have seen so much about. So this one is going to be a long video. I'm going over the sources as quickly as I can because the explanation that I'm giving at the end is actually more important, but as always I list the sources below in the description, and I'll also put them up here somewhere as I'm speaking. But yeah, sources first, then at the end of the video I'm giving my thoughts. I really recommend to stay till the end. Even though it's a long video, especially the girls. I know there's not that many girls watching the channel, but especially girls who are interested in getting into more of the Norse spirituality. You know, if they're experienced in like meditation or lucid dreaming or astral projection, things like that. I've got some pretty cool information for you, and just something that might really help the girls, especially point them in the right direction if they want to get into it more. But anyway, first the sources. We'll speak about the etymology first. Old Norse Valkyria basically means choser of the slain, or perhaps even chosen of the chosen. It can be translated some ways. It's also has cognates and other Germanic languages, and we have a lot of records of it in Old English, actually, Valkyria, and in the English sources it seems slightly different. There they seem to be just simple witches, actually, which I think is actually 100% spot on, but I'll go into that at the end. Side note, Valkyries are also referred to in the Old Norse text as a few other things. Wish maids, Odin's maids, Randalin, like shield goddesses. Those are just a few listed as kennings, and there will be more I'm going over in a minute. Anyway, on to the attestations. There are so many, I wish I could make a 2-hour-long podcast just about Valkyries, but no one would watch that, so I'm going over the sources quickly, but I'm spending a little bit more time on the more important sources. First, we'll go over the sources in the Poetic Edda. So those are, you know, as most of you know by now, the Poetic Edda is the real pagan sources. We're pretty sure that most of those poems are written by pagans for pagans in pagan times. So the most reliable, but also in those are the most vague descriptions. Here in Völuspá, the poem, Odin says that he saw Valkyries coming from far away who are ready to ride at the realm of the gods, and he gives the list of 6 of their names like you see here. One of them actually has the same name as one of the Norns, and I wish I could, you know, go into this more. I've had some crazy experience there that I could share, but I'm trying to keep this video academic, and I'll maybe do another video about that, but just sticking to the sources here. Another source, Grimnismal. Odin says that he wishes that the Valkyries would bring him a drink from their horns, and he lists their names here too. But in this poem there are 13 Valkyries instead of 6, like in Völuspá, and one of those Valkyries' names was Thrudr, meaning power, energy, which is also a daughter of Thor. Hold that thought, because I'll come back to that later in the video. Then we have also in the Poetic Edda the heroic poems. These are, you know, the semi-mythological ones, based on actually real events and humans that we know existed, like Attila the Hun is one of those. But of course it is a mythological text and not to be read as 100% a factual, literal event, but it is definitely based on some real characters that really lived. And in these poems, there are much more clear depictions of Valkyries. We can even say Valkyries are the main focus of these heroic poems. We call them the Helgileis, or the Sigurd cycle poems, or even Njals Saga. But anyway, the first of the heroic poems is Völundarkvida, and in there the heroes meet 3 women that are Valkyries, and they actually take them in and marry them. So those were real humans there. Another one in Helgakvida, Hjörvarssonar. Helgi practices the utiseta, the very powerful meditation, spiritual journey technique in the Norse beliefs, and he sees 9 Valkyries that come to him, like kind of as spirits. One of them was named Svava, and she gives him his name, actually, the name Helgi, and she gives him some spiritual power and protection like many of the other Valkyries do in the other stories. But in this story, Svava is definitely described as somewhat of an invisible spirit sometimes in the stories, but also a real human too, because Helgi goes to visit her at the palace where she's living with her father, King Eilimi. And then the two get married and they die and get reincarnated together, so definitely as a real human there, and also part of the spirit world. Next poems is Helgakvida Hundingsvanna, number 1 and 2, and it basically builds on that story of these two, the hero Helgi and the Valkyrie, being reincarnated for 2 more generations. This is the longest one, and in my favorite story, those 2 poems there, but it's too long to go over, but to sum it up, it's basically the same type of thing. A real living man meets a Valkyrie who is living in some other dimension somehow, some kind of spiritual world, but sometimes that Valkyrie is really listed as a real human, and the two fall in love and get together, and sometimes even the man, the hero, has an actual normal human wife before, but then he takes the Valkyrie as kind of a mistress in a way. Next poem is Sigurd Rifumal, and in here, the story that you all know, that's the story of Sigurd and Brunhilde, the Valkyrie. He rescues her from the sleeping spell and around the circle of fire, and that's the Völsunga Saga that you all know, and also what Sleeping Beauty is based upon. So, and that story is the same type of thing. A man and a Valkyrie fall in love. The Valkyrie gives him some spiritual powers, advice, and protection, and that kind of thing, and it's actually kind of a tragic love story there. So those are all the ones in the Poetic Edda, the real original pagan poems. Next we go on to the Prose Edda. As usual, this is the source that is written by a Christian long after the Viking Age, and this is the one that really the mainstream uses as its source, and it often leads us the wrong way from what the original pagan belief was. You'll see what I mean here. One part of the Prose Edda, it says that there were still others whose duty it is to serve in Valhalla. They bring drink and see to the table and the ale cups, and these women were called Valkyries. They are sent by Odin to every battle where they choose which men are to die, and they determine who has the victory. So that's the story that you probably have all heard of, but it also leaves one more really important thing in here that's pretty cool. Skuld, the last of the Valkyries that he refers to by name, is the youngest Norn too, and she always rides to choose the slain and decide the outcome of the battle. So yeah, that's the basic mainstream view that you have probably all seen about Valkyries in TV shows and movies, but as you can see, it's incomplete and definitely oversimplified. But next we will go on to the Skaldic poems. These are often the oldest things, also written in pagan times by pagans for pagans. And we can even trace the name of the people who wrote a lot of these. But again, these are vague, mentions of Valkyries in these. In Husdropo, they write about how they perceive Valkyries and ravens accompanying Odin to drink the holy offering at Balder's funeral, whatever. Another in Eiriksmal basically has a vague mention of Valkyries, how they serve cups of wine and beer and all that stuff. Another Skaldic poem, Ravnsmal, which is a poem about Harald Fairhair. It's basically, that whole poem is a raven speaking to a Valkyrie and kind of filling her in about the deeds that Harald Fairhair did, because she had not yet heard of him. Another one, Håkonamal, King Håkon has died, and he is received by the Valkyries in Valhalla, and he asks, why did I lose the battle? Why did you grant me the loss? And the Valkyrie said, oh no, don't, you won the battle. We took you, you're dead, and some of your men are dead, but we sent the enemy fleeing. We granted you the victory. So that's Håkonarmal. Other Skaldic poems that are worth noting, are some here that I'll list up. They don't really give any details, but these are just kennings, like how Valkyries can be referred to as, what are other names for them. So that's just a little cool information there, not super important. Then what I went over now was kind of the mythological or semi-mythological sources, but we actually do find some very real records, real sagas that were confirmed to be real events, and then Valkyries are in here too. First one is in Njals Saga, which the men in that story walk upon a hut of 12 women, and they are weaving, and they're singing a song, and they're deciding which men are about to be dying at the Battle of Clontarf, which was a real battle just outside Dublin in the year 1014. Another really cool one that I'll mention here is a witch trial from Norway in I think the early 1300s, but I'll put it up here, the exact date. And it is basically a record of a trial that a woman was being sent to trial for casting this spell, and this spell is exactly here. Send out from me the spirits of the Valkyrie Gondul. And this is basically a kind of spell that was written down or spoken in order to, I think she was trying to get back at her husband with some sort of magic there to attack him. So there, Valkyrie is a spirit that's a human witch, a real human witch who was tried in court, could send out of her body, which again, I think this is 100% spot on, as I will speak about in just a second now. But final source, we can go over the English ones. Again, there are many old English sources that just mention Valkyries as witches, real living human witches. A few of those sources I'll put up here somewhere. Remember, the English, they were pagans following the same religion as the Norse. It's just the English were Christianized a few hundred years earlier, but they were all coming from the same Germanic pagan roots. And the English, of course, by that time had evolved to have a poor understanding of Valkyries, but I still think they were spot on too, and that's what I'm going to explain right now. So I don't even have to say it, I think you guys get it by now by listening to the sources. Valkyries are for sure spirits, but they also very well seem like real women that can use these spirits. Perhaps the Valkyries as real human women either had a way of using these spirits and getting these spirits to do certain work for them, or perhaps the women could have these spirits in their bodies and send those spirits out. Perhaps even the real Valkyries, the spirits in the other world, could come in and possess real human women for certain times. Things like this have been believed all over the world. All of that is definitely possible and makes sense for all of those. It also definitely seems like, Valkyries, real human women could send their Valkyrie spirit over long distances to travel and visit. We see a few examples of that in the sources that I went over, where the Valkyrie visits the hero, or visits a battleground, or visits something like that, and shortly after, the hero actually goes to visit the women in her home to speak to her. They're, hundreds of miles away sometimes. So she sends her spirit. It's all about sending her Hugr, which is a part of your soul in the Norse beliefs. Maybe the woman is, at home resting or sleeping or meditating, and she sends her Hugr out to wherever there is a battle that she needs to look over and do some influence on. And this is not something we understand today in Western culture, really. This is definitely a lost art, but back in time, there were many, many people who could do these things, send their Hugr outside of their body to do certain things. Many sources of this from all over the world, really. Trust me too, I would love to have a Valkyrie on my side when I'm fighting, and I think we can all use some Valkyries, especially today in these hard times with maybe some hard fights coming. So if there is any of you ladies watching that do certain spiritual work, astral projection, meditation, and are into, learning a bit more about spirituality, I think with a bit of training and research, you could bring this lost knowledge and this ability of controlling the Valkyrie spirits back. You can see my video on shapeshifting and the Hugr for a bit more info. Again, I don't know this, I can't bring any answers to you, but at least I can send you a direction of where you can go to study. So you can see my video about Hugr or shapeshifting, links will be below, but you know, this is what I think the original shield maidens were, in my opinion. You know, shield maidens were not some woke girl power feminist army of women who fought in the battle with men like Hollywood wants to portray, but these women, these shield maidens, were actually witches, or völva as they would be called, and they were the ones who were sending their spirits to the battlefield. They were sitting there, you know, a short distance away from the battlefield, or sometimes a very long distance. They'd send these Valkyrie spirits in order to help influence the outcome in the spiritual realm, so it influences the battle. Lots of sources that say this was actually practiced. Again, see my video on that, and also my video porn before workouts to improve performance, and also about the Hugr and shapeshifting. All those videos will be in the links below with the ancient sources. But yeah, that's really what makes the most sense to me. One other thing you will notice about the sources for the Valkyries is there's a strong connection with the Valkyries offering the hero or the dead in Valhalla, or even the gods, a drink. They bring a drink of sacred mead from the drinking horn, and we actually think this reflects some sort of ritual that real humans did. There's a great paper on that I'll also put below. The recipe to this drink is lost, of course, but it was most likely some sort of hallucinogenic substance of some sort that initiated someone into the warrior class. I think very probably that a class of witches was living at the time, völva, and they had the recipe to this drink, and it was their job to brew it and kind of initiate the men into the war class when they came of age, things like that. That's at least what other scholars have theorized, and it makes the most sense. A final possibility before I finish. As always, when we read about any deity, any god or deity, or any of the myths, they are not just superhuman spirits in some other dimension, but they represent, you know, different natural phenomena that we have all around us. Sometimes tangible things, sometimes intangible things. Valkyries are no different. And we can see this when we actually start to look at the names of the Valkyries and translate what they mean. We can start to get a good idea of what many of them actually are. For example, Thrudr is power or energy directly translated, and she is the daughter of Thor and Sif, the earth goddess. So Thrudr is the energy stored in the earth that we can all use as well, just like the electrons in the earth when we take in, when we walk barefoot, like it's called earthing there. Another example, the Valkyrie Skuld, who is also the youngest Norn, and her name basically means death, but that is basically a metaphor for the future. She is a personification of the future, so not only is she a spirit that influences our destiny when we're born, and that can help us in battle, but she is the personification of the future, and this is actually my favorite female in all of the Norse mythology. Skuld. And remember, you know, this is what animism is all about. It's not just humans and animals and trees and rocks that have a spirit. No, everything has a spirit. Even natural phenomena and intangible things too, like thunder has a spirit, the seasons has a spirit, and even the aspect of the future was believed to have a spirit or some sort of consciousness. Those types of things, you know, I will do a whole another video on just the Valkyries' names, but you know, you can look it up yourself. I think there's a pretty good Wikipedia page that has a good list and translation of all the Valkyries' names that we have on record, and you guys can do yourself and come up with some ideas of what they represent. I think probably most of them are certain energies or spirits that in some way help men in battle or affect the outcome, like the spirit of the future determined, or the spirit of the power coming up from the earth to give us energy. This may actually be how the translation and real meaning of the word Valkyrie was lost over the ages. Their name, chooser of the slain, is possibly, you know, not like it's portrayed in the mythology, not like some superhuman spirits spirits up in the sky getting choose who gets to live or die in battle, but perhaps they are just certain energies that have an effect on battle. And over time, as people got Christianized, they lost the meaning of the myths, and they started to refer to them as evil women and witches, like they did, who killed warriors, when in reality, they are just spirits that influence the battle. That's more likely, instead of them being sent there, you know, by Odin to take away the ones who Odin has decided wants to die. Maybe instead of that, they just influence the battle, like not choser of the slain, but more like influencer of who was going to be slain. Originally, it could be something like that, but who knows? Those are just my thoughts, but that's all I have to say for today. Long video, just some sources and my ideals to give you guys some, you know, little directions to go in if you want to think more about it. Lots to speak about and uncover, though. Let me know what you all think. That's why I make these videos, is so we can put our minds together and uncover our lost beliefs. So I would love to see any ideas in the comment section, but that's all for today. Vi ses nästa gång.